All right, in this lesson, we're going to go over a theme that recurs throughout the Republic, from the first book until the last. It's a thread that runs through the whole thing that really helps you get a sense of the point of the Republic and the whole, a vision of the whole. And that is the relation between strength, force, violence, all of those things encapsulated together there, versus persuasion, reason, and like philosophical conversation, right? So strength versus persuasion. And we see this right at the very beginning of the Republic. So Glaucon and Socrates are leaving the Piraeus and they're headed back to Athens when they're stopped by Polemarchus' slave. And they have this conversation, and he says, you've really got to come to my house and join in this conversation and, you know, the festivities of the festival. And they say basically, no, we're headed back. And he says, well, do you see how many of us there are? We're going to force you by strength and violence to stay here. You're going to have to fight us and get the better of us. You're literally forced to come. And Socrates says, well, there's another option. I could persuade you to let me go. And they say, well, we don't listen to persuasion. We're not letting you go. And Glaucon says, yeah, we have to go. I mean, they're gonna beat us up or whatever. So they go. And so at the very beginning, the whole dialogue occurs because of this act of violence. They're forcing Socrates to come participate. So that's what this slide says. Socrates and Glaucon are forced to come to Polemarchus' house. So then once they get there, we get these definitions of justice, and Polemarchus thinks that justice is a kind of violence, and it's a kind of harming one's enemies, right? It's something that arises in war, and it's all about doing violence and harming people who are bad, right? So Polemarchus gives this idea of injustice, or of justice, as some kind of force. And then later we see Thrasymachus kind of condense this idea of force into his own argument for what justice is. And he says that justice is the interest of the stronger, right? So the stronger, the one who uses force, the one who this is a question that keeps opening up throughout the Republic. What is stronger and weaker? Is the philosopher or the tyrant the one who's stronger or the weaker? The philosopher, if they are stronger, it's only because they're stronger in terms of persuasion, because they have a stronger argument, right? They're able to use reason as a means of their strength. But that's not what Thrasymachus means. Thrasymachus means someone who's capable of basically taking advantage of other people, taking power. The stronger is the one who has power. And he says that the one who does the most violence is basically the happiest person, the tyrant. And he says this, he forces this idea almost upon them, and he says, this is what it is. You're an idiot if you think anything else, and Socrates is obviously an idiot, or else he's a liar and a charlatan. And really, doing injustice is the greatest thing in the world, and being violent and getting away with it is the best thing. And then he tries to just run away. He just forces this argument on them. He's not willing to persuade them of it, and then he just tries to leave. Well, then they persuade him to stay, right? And then Socrates shows him through argumentation and through reason that he's wrong. He blushes. And they say that he becomes a friend, right? So the friendship element here is antithesis to force and strength, right? The tyrant has no friends. They only can use strength and force in order to relate to other people, versus the philosopher who has many friends, right? And the philosopher learns from everyone, and the philosopher cares for everyone, and has conversations like Socrates in order to improve their soul and to get them on the path to virtue, right? So Thrasymachus brings this idea of strength, and he forces it upon everyone, and he gives us the ultimate case of the tyrant being the happiest person, and that we can use violence in order to achieve happiness in life. And then persuasion softens him, right? And it moderates him. It brings about this self-reflectiveness, and that allows him to become a friend. Okay, continuing along this thread through the Republic, Socrates creates this city of necessity, right? The first city that he makes, that is called the City of Pigs by Adeimantus. The city of necessity is free from all compulsion. There's no violence in the city. No one is forcing anyone to do anything. People live in harmony, and it's like the parts of the body. No part of the body is violent towards the other parts of the body. Each part voluntarily acts justly. Each part does its own part, right? So here we have a kind of secondary opposition from violence and reason. We have violence versus violence in the sense of compulsion versus a kind of necessity, which is spontaneous or voluntary, right? So the just city acts voluntarily, while an unjust city is full of these kinds of violence and compulsion and things like that. And in order to make the unjust city just, we need forms of compulsion. So the luxuries of the feverish city bring about war and injustice, and the auxiliaries must be forced to protect, right? So that's why we need these spirited, silver-souled people who are going to be under compulsion forced to protect the city. And the noble lie is this kind of force of persuasion, right? The people are lied to and forced to believe something in order to bring about the improvement of the city. There was no need for that in the city of necessity. It became necessary in opposition to things like war and violence and the unlimited desire to acquire more wealth.